In the waning twilight of youth, I was no mere pawn. I was a soldier, forged and tempered in the harsh crucibles that life in a desolate, drug-riddled town could muster, trained to rush headlong into the jaws of danger, to heed commands without a flicker of doubt, and to find an odd form of solace in the meticulous rites of polishing boots, precise folding of uniforms, and saluting with gravity. The uninitiated, ensnared in their little nests of ignorance, might have branded me as lacking intellect. Yet, I harbored an inner sanctum, untouched and vibrant, a testament to a youth where 60 was considered the twilight years, a place where despair trailed behind poverty like a relentless shadow, claiming lives indiscriminately. In those days, the shackles of imprisonment seemed to be forged from birth, an inescapable fate looming darkly on the horizon. It was a path I was hurtling down with alarming speed until destiny handed me a parchment of salvation, enlistment. Suddenly, the world unfolded before me, no longer confined to the grime-ridden gutters of my hometown, but expanding into a horizon that beckoned with promise and grandeur. During basic training, I realized the monumental metamorphosis within me, a newfound ability to carry my head aloft, crowned with a sense of pride and purpose. Syria became my new home, a haven amidst the barren expanses, secluded and fortified, a realm of solitude that housed a young warrior of 21. The military base that embraced me was isolated, a lone beacon in a sea of desolation. Yet, there was a rustic charm in its isolation, a tranquility that allowed the heavens to unveil their nightly tapestry of celestial wonders. Daylight hours were occupied by a rhythmic dance of routines and discipline, a preparation for the time when duty would beckon us to one of the global hotbeds of conflict, our roles switching from mere soldiers to peacemakers, a line blurred by the indiscriminate nature of warfare. Yet, amidst the severe and austere environment, camaraderie flourished. The base catered to every need, with a culinary fare that surpassed anything I had encountered before, and a haven of entertainment that featured a plethora of latest cinematic exploits. I must admit, the continuous parade of caped crusaders scarcely caught my interest, yet there was an undeniable joy in watching extraterrestrial beings meet their comedic demise at the hands of quipping heroes. Romance blossomed secretly in the midst of rigid structures and discipline. Rebecca, a medic of profound skill and compassion, had managed to breach the fortified walls of my heart. Although fraternization amongst the ranks was frowned upon, our growing affection was nurtured in stolen moments, evoking the thrill and trepidation akin to youthful adventures of secret romances and midnight rendezvous, perpetually on the cusp of discovery. Life seemed to cruise at a blissful pace, a symphony of routine and budding romance, until the discordant note struck with the announcement of a mission to Camp Dalton. Situated in the unforgiving terrains to the east of icy expanses, the journey to the decommissioned military base was a grueling testament to resilience and endurance. As our transport maneuvered the harsh balefire desert without the guidance of roads or signs, I couldn't shake off a burgeoning sense of foreboding. Camp Dalton, once brimming with life and activity, had succumbed to the ravages of time. Relinquished to the sand since 1952, a silent sentinel awaiting guardians. We were to be those guardians, an order that brought with it a wave of uncertainty and a parting that wrenched at my heartstrings. Rebecca, who had grown to be an anchor in my life, seemed a universe away. Despite the facade of an indomitable warrior, I couldn't stifle the human craving for connection, the budding affection that had woven its way into the tapestry of my life. As we stood at attention, absorbing the brief that shrouded much in secrecy, I couldn't help but feel an undercurrent of unease, a formidable machine of war. I might have been, yet beneath the steel lay flesh, pulsating with life and yearning. The prospect of parting from Rebecca cast a somber shadow over the mission, a poignant reminder of the vulnerabilities that lay hidden beneath the armor of a soldier. A new chapter was about to unfold, one fraught with uncertainty and the ever-looming shadow of danger. Yet even amidst the approaching storm, a flicker of hope remained, a beacon in the darkness urging me forward into the unknown. Thus, it was under the heavy burden of heartache and an unquenchable thirst for the mysterious that lay in the abandoned basin that I braced myself for the journey ahead. A labyrinth of emotions clouded my mind, a canvas of vivid hues of melancholy and curiosity, intertwining in an intricate dance. As we rumbled towards our unknown destination, each jolt of the truck seemed to resonate deep within my bones, a relentless plea echoing in my vertebrae, urging for reprieve. Upon arrival, I found myself standing on a threshold of history and decay. The towering mesh fence bore the marks of time, streaked with rust and capped with lethal strings of razor wire that gleamed ominously under the sun, ready to flay flesh from bone. An unsettling portal beckoned us, a breach that hinted at recent human activity, where Officer Fletcher guided us through in a regimented line. There we were, 10 unseasoned souls stepping into a world that seemed to have slumbered through decades, untouched and forgotten. The raw energy of reality surged through me, a biting departure from the safety nets of training grounds. The realm we ventured into bore the ghostly whispers of a once vibrant life. Buildings stood like silent sentinels, their facades marred by years of neglect, windows smeared with grime and secrets. Old signposts pointed towards areas that once buzzed with activity, now nothing more than a haunting silhouette of its former self. In the midst of decay, I couldn't shake off the vivid images of a bygone era, where commands echoed sharply and announcements reverberated through loudspeakers that now stood as silent sentinels amidst rooftops. As we navigated through the silence, we found ourselves in an open space that once celebrated unity and discipline, a parade ground where flagpoles stood barren, bereft of the colors they once bore proudly. Questions hung heavily in the air, a palpable sense of confusion as we tried to decipher the purpose of our presence in this forgotten sanctuary that had lain silent for nearly 7 decades. Our pondering was soon interrupted by the appearance of an officer, a figure that seemed to stand in stark contrast to the raw reality surrounding us. His demeanor bore none of the gritty resilience carved from hardship. Instead, a refined presence that seemed untouched by the scars of poverty. His speech resounded with grand visions of resurrection and glory, a prophecy of Camp Dalton rising from the ashes to become a beacon of modern military prowess, an extension of the sanctuary we had left behind. His words hung in the air, a tapestry woven with threads of ambition and grandeur, yet met with a symphony of silence and the undignified chorus of bodily functions that echoed the sentiments of disbelief prevalent among the ranks. The atmosphere grew tense, a noticeable shift as assignments were delegated, dispersing us to stand vigilant over the remnants of a once proud establishment. As I settled into my designated post, I couldn't shake off the oppressive weight of absurdity that clung to the atmosphere. Positioned beside what seemed to be mere debris, the stern facade expected of a guard came naturally, a mirror to the disillusionment that clouded my spirit. As hours trickled by in a slow dance of shadows and sunlight, my mind drifted to comforting visions of a certain medic, a beacon of beauty and grace amidst the chaos. However, this tranquil reverie was shattered by an unsettling sight that gnawed at the edges of my consciousness. Figures encapsulated in hazmat suits began to populate the area, an eerie dance that hinted at underlying dangers lurking within the soil. A burgeoning concern blossomed within me, a nagging suspicion that the ground we stood on harbored secrets far more sinister than mere abandonment. With each passing moment, the sense of foreboding intensified, amplified by the arrival of more suited figures and heavy machinery that roared to life with a mission to unearth the secrets buried deep within the rubble. I stood frozen, a lone sentry amidst a whirlwind of activity, powerless to act yet burdened with a growing tide of apprehension. As the golden insignia of a major flashed before me, commanding an acceleration of the operations with a voice that reverberated through the silence, a chilling realization settled within me. There, amidst the dust and decay, a darker chapter was unfolding, a narrative that threatened to engulf us in a maelstrom of uncertainties and lurking dangers, a journey into the dark recesses of human endeavor and the secrets that lay hidden in the sands of time. As the veil of detritus was gradually lifted, the skeletal remnants of a structure began to emerge before me, painting a grim portrait of what once stood there in full glory. The realization slowly dawned on me that the pile I had been overseeing could have once been the walls and the roof of a building, now lying in ruins. I couldn't shake off the nagging thought that perhaps its downfall had been orchestrated, a calculated act of destruction carried out with precise explosive charges. Trapped in the relentless hold of my duty, I was left to merely ponder over the whys and hows, my mind spiraling into a vortex of theories and conjectures. As I stood there, lost in thought, the excavator resumed its relentless pursuit, scooping away remnants of history with a prowess that reflected the operator's skill. The tension in the atmosphere escalated, resonating with the Major's persistent commands that filled the air with an urgent echo. Just as I felt I was getting lost in the chaos, a sudden revelation brought everything to a halt, a gaping hole in the earth, beckoning with an eerie silence. A staircase emerged from the depths, hinting at a subterranean sanctuary that had remained hidden for years, perhaps decades. As the men clad in hazmat suits ventured into the unknown, a surge of curiosity overtook me. Every fiber of my being buzzed with anticipation, wondering what secrets lay beneath, concealed from the world. However, this wonderment was abruptly interrupted by an unwelcome intrusion of desert fauna that had identified me as their next victim. A swift movement, a muttered oath, and I found myself engaging in a battle against the critters, a momentary distraction from the brewing storm that lurked in the shadows. And then, as if to snap me back to the grim reality, a scream tore through the silence, reverberating with echoes of distress and horror. The sound rooted itself deep within my bones, painting a vivid picture of the terror that lurked below. My gaze darted to the Major, expecting a flurry of actions and commands to rescue the endangered soul. Yet to my dismay, he seemed paralyzed, entrapped in a web of shock and disbelief. My instincts screamed at me to leap into action, yet a voice of caution echoed within, warning of the consequences of taking the initiative in a hierarchy that demanded obedience above all. But when a second scream, more harrowing than the first, resonated from the dark abyss, all hesitation evaporated. Fueled by a desperate need to act, I found myself scrambling over heaps of debris, plunging headfirst into the dark maw that opened before me. As I ventured deeper, the world transformed into a realm of darkness, where sight gave way to heightened senses of sound and touch. Soon, a beam of light broke the pervasive darkness, revealing a frantic scene of struggle and fear. Two men, in their protective attire, were grappling with another who seemed consumed by panic, his cries echoing the presence of unseen entities. Responding to their desperate plea for assistance, I aided them in restraining the distressed man, dragging him back to the surface where the piercing sunlight seemed almost surreal after the dark ordeal. Upon returning to the world above, a chilling realization washed over me. In my haste to rescue, I had neglected my own safety, venturing unprotected into a potential hotspot of hazardous material. The fear of exposure now hung heavily in the atmosphere, a looming threat that overshadowed the frantic efforts to stabilize the rescued man. As the Major seemed to awaken from his stupor, concern and authority etched on his face, I found myself pleading for permission to seek medical help, my voice barely masking the underlying fear. However, the response I received was a stark reminder of the harsh realities of the chain of command, a clear delineation of priorities that seemed almost cruel in that moment. Even amidst the unfolding chaos, the Major sought to unravel the mysterious event that had transpired below, demanding answers, yet cutting them off abruptly, as if afraid to unveil the full extent of the lurking horrors. The urgency of the situation was palpable, the demands for swift recovery and a return to the depths reflecting a dark undercurrent of secrets yet to be uncovered. Amidst the whirlwind of panic and confusion, a familiar face emerged, a beacon of hope in a world teetering on the edge of darkness. The sight of Rebecca, seated in the driver's seat of a medical corps jeep, ignited a flicker of joy within me, a brief respite from the grim reality that surrounded us. Yet, the joy was tinged with the sadness of unspoken words, of emotions held at bay, waiting for a moment of solitude to fully blossom. As Rebecca exchanged salutes with the higher-ups, including a second lieutenant, who seemed to have taken his time to grace us with his presence, I felt a whirlpool of emotions threatening to engulf me. In that fleeting moment, amidst the chaos and the unfolding mysteries, I clung to the sliver of hope that her presence brought, a beacon of light in a world teetering on the edge of dark revelations and lurking dangers. I pondered ruefully as the Major initiated a discussion with Rebecca, his tone laced with a mix of urgency and secrecy. "I am entrusting you with this information solely to facilitate appropriate medical treatment," he stated gravely, hinting at a potential breach in the safety of the man's protective suit and the risk of exposure to some lingering chemical remnants, perhaps causing hallucinations. Rebecca absorbed the information with a demeanor that exuded calm professionalism, embodying her role to the fullest. The second lieutenant, on the other hand, seemed to be grappling with a surge of panic, his discomfort almost palpable. His fear escalating, he demanded to know the extent of the threat, voicing concerns about the potential involvement of biological weapons and advocating for a cautious retreat. His nervous inquiries only seemed to fuel the Major's disdain, as a scornful expression marred his features. Without mincing words, the Major delved into a tale dating back to the 1950s, revealing the dark history that shrouded the base we stood upon. Mention of a classified incident that led to the abandonment of the base, and subsequent access to top-secret reports detailing progressive and groundbreaking research that once took place here. The Major harbored ambitious plans to resurrect that research, adamant that unlocking the secrets held within these forsaken walls could forge a formidable asset in the defense of their nation. The second lieutenant seemed to struggle to keep his composure, his face contorted with dread and nausea. Yet his concerns about the ongoing construction activities were met with a chilling and ruthless dismissal from the Major. The clear message was that the mission superseded all, and defiance would not be tolerated. A mocking laugh accentuated the gravity of the consequences that awaited any dissent, a stern reminder of the harsh realities of military hierarchy. Resigned to his fate, the second lieutenant squared his shoulders and offered a stiff salute, sealing his commitment to the ominous task at hand. The Major reciprocated with an almost dismissive gesture, urgently rallying the troops for the descent back into the foreboding depths below. Meanwhile, Rebecca conducted a preliminary examination of the distressed man in the hazmat suit, her expertise guiding her to a cautious recommendation of temporary relief from duty pending further tests. A suggestion that was swiftly brushed aside by the Major, his impatience and single-minded focus apparent in his disregard for the well-being of his subordinate. Even the excavator driver was not spared from the Major's tyrannical decree, pulled from his momentary respite and thrust into the perilous mission that lay ahead. Reluctantly, we all fell in line, forming a single-file procession towards the gloomy abyss, leaving only Rebecca behind as a solitary beacon of sanity amidst the growing chaos. The atmosphere below was palpably tense, the darkness now segmented by intersecting beams of torchlight. Leading the procession were the trio in hazmat suits, followed closely by the higher-ranking officers. Each step forward intensified the growing sense of apprehension, the unsettling awareness of the unknown substances that might be invading our lungs. My skin felt clammy, the cool underground air doing little to alleviate the sweat that drenched my face. As we ventured deeper, the surroundings revealed glimpses into a bygone era, with corridors lined with rooms that housed remnants of scientific endeavors. Fleeting glimpses of lab equipment and presentation boards, a forlorn tweed jacket, and a magazine whose pages bore the testament of time, all painted a vivid tapestry of lives once lived here. The claustrophobic nature of our journey did little to soothe my escalating unease. A lingering dread permeated the air, fueled by the mysteries surrounding the classified incident that haunted these halls. My mind buzzed with a growing need for answers, a thirst for understanding that seemed almost oppressive as we delved deeper into the belly of the forsaken facility. Suddenly, a frantic cry pierced the stifling silence, drawing our attention to a hazmat-clad figure pointing fervently into the enveloping darkness. The Major's reprimand fell on deaf ears as panic overtook discipline. In the murky distance, an unsettling movement caught our collective gaze, a fleeting shadow that hinted at a presence that should not exist. As the torch beams converged on the distant corridor, it became painfully clear that we were not alone. A dark entity, a phantom of the past perhaps, seemed to retreat further into the shadows, evading our searching lights, leaving a trail of dread and unanswered questions in its wake. The Major had clearly observed the figure as well. "Follow it," he ordered. The man in the hazmat suit who had earlier voiced his fears wasn't having it. He tore off his helmet, his face ghostly white and on the verge of tears. "No," he firmly stated. "We need to get out of here right now. They are here." The Major was about to bark another command when the first of these apparitions revealed itself. "There," the soldier who first saw it whispered. As all our torchlights converged on the room, we saw a monstrosity bathed in its harsh glow. It seemed like it had once been a man before decay took its toll. Its skin was sloughing off, revealing bone in places, and blood-red eyes were set deep into the hollowed sockets of its face. One of the men muttered a soft, "What?" which drew the creature's nightmarish gaze. Despite its mostly rotted-away jaw, it seemed to be trying to communicate, a hoarse and gurgling whisper emanating from its shriveled lips. "You left us. You abandoned us," it murmured in a sickening tone. "Left us while our hunger grew. But now we shall feed." The second lieutenant, panicked, grabbed the Major's arm. "Sir, what do we do?" But the Major was just as paralyzed as the rest of us. Guns were drawn, safeties clicked off, but hesitation gripped us all. We knew we had to act, and quickly. It was then that more of these beings began to emerge from the darkness, revealing various stages of decomposition. Their initial sluggishness soon turned to a horrifying charge. Soldiers were caught, their arms bitten into and heads brutally bashed against the walls. No shots were fired. It was all too swift, and we were all too close together. My eyes caught the Major slipping away, and instinctively I followed. He darted into a nearby room, almost shutting me out before I managed to force my way in. We barricaded ourselves, but through the window we could still witness the massacre. My respect for the Major, for the chain of command, was all but gone in that moment. I demanded answers. As he spoke, the reality of the situation settled in. An experimental gas that kept troops active beyond death, making them undying assets. A successful yet grotesque venture. The creatures outside were those soldiers. But before our conversation could conclude, hands broke through the window, grabbing the Major. I watched, horrified, as they tore him apart. In mere moments, it was evident that they would come for me next. But before they could, a shot rang out, taking one down. More shots followed, each taking down another of those things with deadly precision. To my surprise, the savior was none other than Rebecca, who had seemingly taken matters into her own hands. "That's how you kill a zombie," she said with a triumphant grin. We managed to make our way out, with the setting sun painting the horizon. A brief moment of peace settled between us, and the weight of what just transpired was momentarily forgotten as we gazed at the stars, embracing the sheer joy of being alive. We drove away, ready to face whatever consequences awaited, knowing that this story had to be told.